It was a confession that defied all explanation. A man sits in a stark interrogation room, accused of dozens of the most brutal murders the nation has ever seen. Investigators lean in, desperate for answers, for closure, as the man begins to speak, detailing acts of unimaginable violence. A sound fills the room, a giggle, not a sob, not regret, but a soft, unnerving chuckle. This was the reality of Andrei Chikatilo's confession, a moment forever seared into the memory of Soviet law enforcement. He didn't just confess to a few crimes, he opened a floodgate. Over 50 murders spanning 12 years, a grim tally that shocked even the most hardened investigators. The man they called the Butcher of Rostov was finally talking, but the way he talked was perhaps more disturbing than the silence that had preceded it. His words painted a picture of a predator who moved through the world like a ghost. Schoolteacher, husband, father, an ordinary man hiding extraordinary evil. The confession was not just a list of crimes, it was a psychological puzzle box. Investigators weren't just listening to a killer, they were trying to understand a monster who found private amusement in recounting his atrocities. The giggling, the strange calmness, the meticulous detail, it all pointed to a mind that operated on a different plane of reality. The investigators wanted a confession to close the case, but what they received was a terrifying glimpse into the abyss. This is not just a story about crimes committed, but about the chilling performance when the curtain was finally pulled back. It's a story about the nature of evil and the unsettling ways it can manifest. The experience would haunt those present for the rest of their days. Who was Andrei Romanovich Chikatilo? To understand the shock of his confession, you have to understand the man he pretended to be. Born in Ukraine in 1936, his early life was marked by famine and war. He grew up quiet, awkward, bullied, eventually becoming a teacher, engineer, husband, and father. Outwardly, he was a model Soviet citizen, a cog in the state machine. But beneath this veneer, a predator lurked. For over a decade, Chikatilo stalked train stations and bus stops, preying on the vulnerable, children, teenagers, women. He used his non-threatening appearance as his most effective weapon, luring victims away from safety. The investigation, Operation Forest Stripe, became one of the largest in Soviet history, but police were baffled, hunting a phantom who left few clues. A wrongful arrest and execution haunted the case, while Chikatilo moved freely among them. He was stopped, questioned, even tested. But a rare biological anomaly and outdated systems let him slip away. He was a shadow in plain sight, a monster hiding behind mediocrity. His ability to blend in made the eventual revelation of his crimes all the more horrifying. When Chikatilo was finally captured in November 1990, investigators knew they had their man, but they needed a confession. Enter Dr. Alexander Bukhanovsky, the psychiatrist whose psychological profile broke Chikatilo's silence. As Chikatilo began to talk, the giggle emerged, a quiet, breathy chuckle at the most inappropriate moments. He would recount murders, reliving them with a small, chilling smile and that signature giggle. It was as if he was sharing a private joke, relishing the memory. Hardened investigators could only stare in disbelief. The giggling was not a one-time occurrence. It recurred throughout his lengthy confessions. He described suffering, then smirked, detailed horror, then chuckled. For those present, it was a psychological ordeal, extracting information while witnessing a grotesque performance. The giggle was a window into a profoundly broken mind, deriving pleasure and humor from violence. Was it madness, a nervous tic, or something more sinister? To investigators, it felt like mockery. Chikatilo seemed to enjoy the shock and revulsion he provoked. Even in custody, he was in control, the star of his own horrifying show. The giggle became his signature, a sound that encapsulated the absolute disconnect between his actions and any recognizable human emotion. It was the echo of a soul replaced by something monstrous. The interrogation of Chikatilo was a guided tour through horror, led by the killer himself. Once he began to confess, he seemed eager to cooperate, on his own terms. He insisted on being taken to crime scenes, leading armed guards through forests and fields, pointing out locations with unnerving calm. He acted out moments of the crimes, demonstrating his methods with disturbing precision. The giggling, the smirking, the almost cheerful recounting of details persisted. At times he became animated, eyes lighting up as he described attacks. The investigators, forced to listen day after day, struggled to maintain composure. Soviet criminology was unprepared for a killer like Chikatilo, whose motives defied their established profiles. His behavior forced them to confront a new kind of criminal, one driven by a pathological compulsion. Dr. Buchanovsky faced a monumental challenge, understanding the mind of Andrei Chikatilo. His psychological profile had helped break the case, but now he had to interpret the giggling, the calmness, the lack of remorse. Was Chikatilo insane or simply evil? Buchanovsky diagnosed a personality disorder, sadistic urges he could not control, yet he knew right from wrong. The giggling, Buchanovsky argued, was not amusement but a symptom of profound psychological sickness, a release when reliving his crimes. This expert opinion created a dilemma. Was Chikatilo responsible, or a victim of his own mind? The prosecution saw the giggling as mockery, evidence of cruelty and control. The debate highlighted a question that still plagues criminology. Where does mental illness end and evil begin? Chikatilo's ability to function in society pointed to control, but his secret life revealed a fractured mind. Buchanovsky's analysis deepened the mystery of the giggling killer. The trial of Andrei Chikatilo in April 1992 was a spectacle. Confined to a cage in the courtroom, Chikatilo alternated between lucidity and bizarre outbursts, exposing himself, shouting, pretending to sleep. At times, he calmly answered questions. At others, he giggled as the prosecutor read out the details of his crimes. His videotaped confessions became the prosecution's most powerful evidence. The defense's insanity plea crumbled in the face of his performance. The public, captivated and horrified, saw him as the embodiment of evil. The image of Chikatilo in his cage, giggling, became iconic. There was little sympathy. The people wanted justice. The trial was a national reckoning with the monster who had terrorized them for over a decade. Chikatilo's confessions exploded into the public consciousness, amplified by a new era of Soviet openness. Newspapers and television reported the gruesome details, turning the butcher of Rostov into a national obsession. The public was both repulsed and fascinated, their worldview shattered. The revelation that a serial killer had operated in their midst for 12 years created a new sense of fear and suspicion. Chikatilo's giggling, widely reported, became the focal point of outrage, a symbol of his utter lack of humanity. The media fueled this sentiment, turning him into a symbol of pure evil. For the families of the victims, the confession brought answers, but also new horror. Their private grief became a national spectacle. The pain was laid bare for all to see, a constant reminder of the monster who had torn their lives apart. The nation was forced to confront a darkness it had long denied. The Chikatilo case was a brutal awakening for Soviet law enforcement. It exposed deep flaws in investigation methods and shattered the myth that serial murder was a Western phenomenon. Lacking forensic technology and psychological profiling, the system let Chikatilo slip through its fingers. Operation Forest Stripe became a blueprint for what not to do. The case highlighted the need for better science, profiling, and national crime databases. Dr. Buchanovsky's work gained new respect, and psychological profiling became essential. The wrongful conviction of Alexander Kravchenko was a stark lesson in the dangers of tunnel vision. The investigation forced a modernization of Russian criminology. Chikatilo's crimes provided a brutal education for authorities. Monsters could be living next door. To catch a monster, they learned, you had to think like one. In October 1992, the long trial ended. Andrei Chikatilo was found guilty of 52 murders and sentenced to death. The families of the victims wept with relief and grim finality. Chikatilo showed little reaction, appealing the verdict in vain. For a year and a half he sat on death row, the giggling had stopped. On February 14, 1994, his final appeal was denied. He was executed with a single gunshot. The butcher of Rostov was dead, the reign of terror was over. The story of Chikatilo's confessions remains one of the most disturbing in true crime. It forces us to confront the reality that evil can be ordinary, hidden behind a mask. His case is a dark reminder of the importance of diligent police work and the complexities of the human psyche. The giggling may be silenced, but its echo lingers. There are always more stories to tell. Subscribe to our channel for more.